someone that I was introduced to recently, and I'm really excited to have presenting here today. Her name is Lynn Vitale, and she is an LMT and CN. She majored in economics with postgraduate work in medical sciences and additional certifications in bodywork, Ayurveda, and holistic nutrition. Her journey in the healing arts developed richly as she worked for years in practices with integrated physicians, acupuncturists, chiropractors, and nurses. Ultimately, she developed an integrated modality of Ayurvedic medicine, yoga, advanced body work, and integrated nutrition. Vitale uses her 19 years of experience in integrated medical practices to educate on the consumer mindset and to distill these wisdoms into digestible information bites. She recently joined the Garden of Life team as their Northeast regional educator. So with that, so welcome.
All right, very good. It'll jump in. Great. So is everybody ready for about a 3-hour seminar on the elements, the doshas, all of the philosophies? You're ready for that? Wow, you all are amazing. Do you need a little moment to kind of refresh yourselves? You want to take two seconds? Do a little meditation, a little energy meditation, real quick? Okay, cool. So get in your chair so you're not slouching. Open up. Get on your sits bones. Cool? All right, so there's a couple ways to do this. You can just close your eyes, or if we want everybody to feel the most comfortable, you can take your thumbs like this, put them on your ear flaps. Don't close your ears yet, but you're going to close them in a moment. And then just turn your hands and cover your eyes. So you want to line up your fingertips. Wait, don't close your eyes yet. You're still looking at me. Okay. So we're going to do the bee buzzing, a Bhramari meditation, okay? You're like, yes! All right, so the point of this is that as you start to hum, your mouth is closed, but your teeth aren't clenched. You're open back here, and you want to find that sound that kind of resonates inside your head. Did you ever get in the bathroom by yourself and kind of hum and be like, wow, that sound really resonates in these metal walls, and you find that, and then somebody walks in, you're like, okay. So you get to do this in your head, and the cool part is we're all going to have our ears closed, right? So you can be humming and buzzing as loud as you want, okay? And then if you haven't come to after, say, 15 seconds, I'll tap you on the shoulder. But if we close our eyes, it's great. So get to your ear flaps here, cover your eyes, and relax your mouth and start to find a resonance inside your head that really vibrates. Go ahead, start buzzing. All right, great. So you find something that just sort of really echoed inside of your head. You found something that sort of resonated your sinus cavities in your brain. So now the trick is, how can you do this anywhere, right? So now take another, say, 15 seconds. Close your eyes only. Open the back of your throat and imagine that you're buzzing. So just give that a try. Great. So obviously at home you can buzz as loud as you want. And on the subway you can buzz as loud as you want, because you know how it is on the subway. But in a meeting, maybe you need to refresh yourself. Maybe you need to just clear something from your head. You have to be able to know what that buzzing is going to feel like to recreate it. It's like you can create tension here without there being a ball between your hands, right? You can do that. That's what Qigong is about. It's like creating this energy here. Same thing inside of your head. So that's a meditation called Bhramari, B-R-A-H-M-A-R-I. You can look it up. It's fun. It can be really detailed, or you can take it really lightly. I love this guy, Lonnie, who just spoke. Really cool because he's bringing in some very important concepts and taking it very lightly. And I love that because Ayurvedic is there, Chinese medicine is there, ancient philosophies are there to give you amazing, deep, rich tools, thousands of years old, to really help you evolve if you want to. And they're also there if you're doing okay to just form a framework within which you can just kind of sit and resonate. And that's kind of what I want to talk to you about today. I'm not going to take you through, you don't need to take notes, really. I want you to feel the resonance of Ayurveda and of ancient philosophies and how this is really all connected to everything you've been hearing about this whole time. Who's been here for the weekend? Who's heard a lot of different talks, music, different things going on? So you've heard a lot of really mind-blowing stuff, right? Some really interesting things. I hope this kind of ties a lot of it together. So I didn't start studying Ayurvedic medicine. I first heard about it in 1996, and that was when I started studying bodywork. I never went to India until like 2001. I was 29 years old when I first went to India. And I tell you this just to kind of set the framework so you understand that I didn't, I'm born in California, I grew up in the United States. I didn't grow up in a culture of Ayurveda, of yoga, of Hinduism, of philosophies. I grew up in a very standard middle American way. But in 1996, when I was first exposed to Ayurvedic medicine and the Ayurvedic philosophies and the Doshas, which are the constitutions, it just resonated. It just sort of got in my bones, and I just felt it. I felt like I could just see it. It was like I just saw things differently. We each have our own perspectives and ways to see things. So when I finally got to sit down in, around 2002 and start to study with a master, it was like it had already been there before. And she said it. She said, you don't need to take notes. Just sit here. Literally sometimes on the floor at her feet, I would just sit there and listen. And this information, these wisdom from thousands of years would just kind of come in and settle back in my brain and the seat of my consciousness like it had been there before. And she said it, you've been here before. If you're here today to learn this, to help people, if this is your dharma, if this is your path, you've done this before, I'm just here to help you remember. And that really settled with me. I understand that all of these terminologies, vata, pitta, kapha, ambuva hasrota, nadis, like pingali, these are like, wow, what are those words? These are Sanskrit words. This is not our common language. We learn them and then we tweet about them and then we, put them on Facebook and we hashtag them because that makes us cool, right? Just as nice. I love that. What is your path to enlightenment? How enlightened are you if you post a lot? It's just funny. We can't take ourselves too seriously, right? But the real goal of Ayurveda is not to learn all these Sanskrit terms. The goal of yoga is not to learn, Sanskrit terminologies for your postures. It's to feel the resonance of those postures, the resonance of the meditations. You don't have to know the words. You don't have to make it complicated. The goal of Ayurveda is not to complicate your life and become an academic. For most of us, it's to understand the best way to enjoy our lives. It's to understand our connectedness. Is to see the way that we relate to life itself within us and all the way out there, okay? So the connection in Ayurveda between mind, body, and spirit and the escapement from ego is really a main goal because ego is present no matter what. That is a part of our manifestation. We can't escape, but I'm here to tell you that, why it's your friend, really. When I made this presentation, this came up and my son saw it and he said, he's 9. He's like, Mom, that's funny that you're putting that in that presentation because I think that every morning. You gotta love kids. They're like contemplating things you don't even know they're contemplating. So in Ayurveda, as I started to listen to these ancient wisdoms, one of the most profound things that I heard that made such sense to me was humans are a microcosm. We reflect the macrocosm within us, in our minds, in our cells, the way we function, in the elements within us, the atoms within us. And so that whole concept of as without, so within, as above, so below, these things are all related. And we can see that as we start to look at things on a more universal perspective. In Ayurvedic medicine, we know that the elements that are present in all matter are present in each individual, in each being, in each organism. There is no hierarchy of sentience, right? It's not just for humans. It's for any living cellular organism. And matter is present, whether living or not, in all organisms. And so those elements are present within all organisms. So that leads me to think gosh, what is the microcosm of the human being, you know? And so Ayurveda and the learning these ancient wisdoms and these philosophies, it just gave me a path to sort of start to answer some of these really fundamental questions. And I started to see the relatedness of all things and how they're very much tied together. And so, you know, when we consider an atom, the nucleus is surrounded by an electron cloud of probability. If you could freeze any electron or bunch of electrons, the number of electrons kind of defining which element you're talking about, you would have a ton of space, a huge amount of space, right? And then you go into molecules, atoms combining to form molecules. There's still a whole lot of space there. Molecules coming together to form tissues. Tissues having some sort of organization and common purpose. Tissues coming together to form organs, which have some governance. Organs coming together to form systems, which are alliances. Systems coming together to form you and other living beings, right? You are not a being that can function and actually be alive without these systems functioning. And they all start here with all of this space. And space is really where everything happens in Ayurveda. Space is ether. It's the first element. It's where all things occur. And where are electrons in that ether? And what is ether? The best description for ether for us to understand it is the space between the heavenly bodies. You know, it's not air. Air is a different element. So then, you know, I ask you to consider what happens as we express this inner microcosm and we take it out. How do these relate? How do they correlate? How is the earth related to us and us to the earth and all of our organizations and cities? And how does that relate to our solar system? And how does the solar system sit in our particular galaxy? And how does our particular galaxy sit in all the galaxies? And how do the galaxies sit within the nebulae? And how does all of that fit into the entire universe? And what the heck is the boundary of the universe anyway? These are big questions that we go back and ruminate on after we do ayahuasca, Long Island tea, Long Island ayahuasca, whatever that is, things like that. You know, that lends a much greater rumination of these kinds of concepts. But do you see very easily how the space between the electrons and the nucleus are absolutely the same thing as the space between the heavenly bodies? It's just a microcosm in the macrocosm. So then I've learned a lot in the last years. I start to look at research, I start to look at medicine, I'm learning a lot about microbes inside of us, right? And then I start to think, wow, what's going on in there? And that's something I really want to explore with you today. But first we have to understand how these things are at play in our bodies. So of the Shad Darshan, which are the 6 main philosophies of Ayurveda, this is where we're going to get to the boring part. You should pick up a pen and paper and take some notes now, okay? I expect to be able to test you on this at the end. So really, actually, just relax and understand this. Sankhya means understanding truth. This is my favorite of the philosophies of Ayurveda because this is really our cosmology. This really tells us why we're here. You know, not just what we're supposed to do, but why are we here? How did this all happen? And it's truly beautiful. And it's not just about Ayurveda. It's not about Hinduism. It's not about yoga. It's about life itself. So in the beginning, there was nothing. And then a big wind swept over the waters. It's very much that same story. Purusha, masculine, pure consciousness, completely unmanifested without the presence and the cooperation of divine feminine creation. Purusha joins in Prakriti, here, and manifests matter. Prakriti does not exist without Purusha, but Purusha cannot manifest without Prakriti. The joining of the two creates Mahat, divine supreme intelligence, the divine intelligence that governs all cells, the divine intelligence in every strand of DNA that determines what's going to happen with that particular cell. Mahat reflected in our physical form, and Buddhi is that Purusha, that pure consciousness that's maintained in the physical being. It's that essence that we all retain and can tap into. Buddhi could be described even, you know, as the pure ojas or soma, that golden nectar, 8 drops of which you can create if you actually do a silent meditation for 15 years or if you tweet about it for 1 year. And then what happens? So look at this now as the development of a child. Look at it as, seed, embryo, birth, coming into being a child and developing ahamkara. Here is the I, the ego, that self-awareness. This is where everything goes wrong, right? This is where all of our troubles start. It's when we get this sense of self-awareness, but if we didn't have that, we wouldn't be manifested. What is the purpose of that? What is the purpose of developing this sense of self-awareness in us and our relatedness to everything else? It's all reflected in the sense organs, in the organs of action, in the elements themselves. And through the elements, air, ether, fire, water, earth, we are able to actually perceive. If there weren't elements, if we didn't have senses, if we didn't have organs with which to sense and perceive, we would not be experiencing. If we were not experiencing, we would not be fulfilling the sole purpose why we are here. Purusha, pure consciousness, wants to evolve. It cannot evolve in a void. It has to evolve through manifestation. And this gives a whole different perspective to our purpose here in the life, and to the mistakes that we make and the choices we make and the paths that we take. All of that is just experience. So if you can forgive yourself of your imbalances, forgive yourself of your dis-ease, forgive yourself of your mistakes, then you're truly living in Ayurvedic wisdom, because you're sending all of these experiences back to the source, and the source can evolve. So a good experience, a bad experience, doing everything perfectly, making mistakes, it doesn't matter. It all goes back to the same source, and it all contributes to a greater evolution. So these elements at play, space or ether, air, water, fire, earth, they're at play in all of us, and what you've probably heard of is called the doshas. And you're born with a certain set of doshas or constitutional balance, and that's what you get. It's not good, it's not bad, it doesn't need to be judged, it is what it is. You just have to understand it. You have to understand, what is your forte, what are you good at, where do you need help, what do you struggle with? Can you kind of preempt that and help yourself to achieve a healthier, more balanced state by understanding who you are better? So when you start to understand how the elements play in you and how they play in the world around you and how that affects you and why you really suffer in cold wind, whereas your friend does better in cold wind. Why is that true? It's not that you're weak, it's that you are different. It's that you have your own set of elements at play in your body. So let's start here with a little bit different, more artistic rendition of the Sankhya philosophy and this journey of consciousness into matter, because I want to show you that it's just a continuum. Consciousness comes in, is manifest into matter, and then down into our grossest elements, our physical body. This is heavy. Gross, not as in disgusting, but gross as in heavy, as in substantial, as in matter, right? Not just energy. But then what do? We gather up that matter and we try to make the journey back through the chakra system. So we have these systems that we've developed throughout time as humans to try to understand this journey in our body of matter being formed, of consciousness coming in and then disassembling all of that matter and returning to a state of pure consciousness. And do we do it? Do we finally arrive back to pure consciousness? No, most of us don't finally arrive. There are a few beings, I'm sure, that have maybe finally arrived, and then they disappear. Like Lucy. Everybody see Lucy? Like that, But most of us, it's momentary. It's a momentary feeling of dissolving matter back into pure consciousness. So here you have the doshas, the elements at play. I like to turn it on its head with fire on top so that you can see how it relates to all of the symbol throughout the ages. You have the alchemical symbol of the elements here. Again, the Ayurvedic symbols, the pentagram shape that forms as you connect each of them and their interrelatedness. What about the Chinese system? What about an integrated system? They all work together. They are coming from the same origin. Ayurveda is not the origin of everything. The Kabbalah is not the origin of everything. There's much before that. These symbols have been used. I was just looking at, my son's doing a project on Native American history, woven baskets with the flower of life and the Vesica Pisces, and I was like, whoa, it's everywhere. It's everywhere on the globe. This is the yantra that describes the elemental forces at play, and here are many yantras, which I'm sure you've seen here and there throughout this kind of philosophy and talk. Tree of Life. Anybody familiar with this particular symbology? I'm not here to teach you about the Tree of Life or about religion or about Judaism or anything like that, because this is ancient symbolism. It's here to describe how we got here, why we're here, what our purpose is, how do we send these fabulous energetics and experiences back to consciousness, back to the source. Here again, the elements are at play, even in this, the Tree of Life. And people are constantly trying to equate this to other symbologies. Here it is, and the beginnings of the seed of life. What is the seed of life? The seed of life is the organizational structure through which all cells multiply. You have an egg and sperm, and they combine. You have an embryo. It starts to divide. It divides in a particular geometric fashion. There's a math to it. That's Mahad. That's divine intelligence. That's supreme intelligence that governs all things. It's incredible. You see it here in two-dimensionality. In four-dimensionality, we start to move into Metatron's cube as things are connected in all dimensions. But the Tree of Life still exists even within that structure. Metatron's cube includes the plutonic elements. These are sacred. They're so sacred, some of them were never even spoken out loud, so don't read aloud. Don't read aloud. Terrible, terrible things can happen. This is the spell portion of my talk, actually. But this is ancient stuff, and it's very resonant within us. It's so resonant within us that we combine it constantly into other systems. Here's your astrological system. These things are all related. The flower of life, beginning with one circle, interconnected, all sacred symbols existing within these. And we're always trying to bring it back to our human body, into our physical form, and we're always trying to escape physical form. Why are we trying to escape physical form? Physical form is our vessel. It's the vessel, it's the vehicle, it's the way that we get to actually get these experiences. This is our 007 Bentley, Rolls-Royce, Jaguar, Aston Martin. This is our vehicle. It's very important to experience it. It's very important to love it. It's important to want to be in it and to try to experience how these energetics, these symbols, these geometries, these resonances play out in our lives. You simply have to be aware of them. Some people are going to want to study them. Some people are going to want to draw them. Some people are going to want to paint them. Beautiful art I saw last night. Gorgeous. These things are great meditations. They're really important for us to use visually. It doesn't mean that you enter a religion. It doesn't mean that you study a philosophy. These are common to all people on this planet. They've been drawn out in incredible academic ways, but in their simplicity, they're common to all of us. Tattoos, combining into Hermetic symbols. Some people are doing some wild things with art out there. Here again, the hydrogen atom, the first element, right? So the nucleus, single electron. An electron cloud of probability and how that can show up in resonance. Very similar to the flower of life. Very much the same kind of assembly. The symbol is present all over the world. Thousands and thousands of years. You can find it everywhere in the world, in all kinds of different civilizations, all kinds of different philosophies. So many things are present within this single symbol. So then I question, are we all beholden to this geometric arrangement? Is this sort of the matrix in which we exist? Is there perhaps any randomness to it? Is there another possibility? So with my research and all that I'm coming to know about our inner microcosm and what might live inside of us that views us as its universe, if this is the universe, what's living inside of us? Well, gee, doesn't that look like the seed of life? What is that? That's a microbe. How interesting how they assemble themselves in very similar fashions, living in this ether, this space that is our human body, forming their own communities, having their own interactions, and guess what? These little guys play a huge role in our perceptions. So if they play a huge role in our perceptions, and this is actual proven research now. If you didn't always know that there was a creature inside of you telling you what to eat and what to do, now science is actually proving it for you. If you didn't feel like there were beasties in there telling you to eat that cake, now science is proving it to be true. They're communicating with us. They make signals. They make neurotransmitters. They change our hormones. They're communicating not only with our gut and our gastrointestinal system, but with our brain. They make substances that our brain needs that can't be made anywhere else. And if they shut down the factory, brain doesn't get it. So whether imbalanced or balanced, these microorganisms absolutely can inhibit or facilitate our ability to understand our journey and understand our consciousness and to evolve. They actually play a huge role in it. So what is the sentience of a microorganism is starting to be the question I'm asking. Human Microbiome Project is a great place to go and look for cataloging of all of the microbes. These mean single-celled organisms that are microscopic, that live in and on your human body, and all the genetic material they contain. But genetic material means divine supreme intelligence. Anytime there is DNA, anytime there's a cellular motion, a direction, there is a divine intelligence that governs that, something that came from an origin. And it's in these guys too, all of them, all of the microbes. 100 trillion friends you didn't know you had. You have more than 100 trillion microbes in each of your bodies. You know how many human cells you have? Maybe 10 trillion. You're outnumbered 10 to 1 by microbes. Crazy, right? Isn't that wild? So what are we really made of is kind of the question. So microbes live in communities. Our cells live in communities. Animals live in communities. Humans live in communities. What is this interrelatedness? Is it a sacred geometrical interrelatedness, or is it kind of a haze, like a microscopic download of the cloud that we're interacting with all the time? Because like this picture depicts, it's not just what's on us or in us, we're breathing them in all the time. We're interacting with them on the subway, not necessarily in a bad way, it's a constant communication. But the health of your body determines how you interact with all these microbes around the world. And we start to feel really insignificant when we look at the fact that besides the fact that you're hugely outnumbered by number, our human genome is really nothing compared to the microbial genome inside of us. 23,000 genes approximately identified in the human genome. We thought that once we sequenced the human genome, it would tell us a lot about ourselves and we would find out exactly how superior we actually are. As you may know, there are worms that have more genes than we do. But what's crazy about the microbes, if you look at the entire microbial community, which is now being called an actual organ or connective tissue system in our bodies, if you look at that, you find out that we are less than 1% human by genetic diversity. Less than 1% human when you look at genetic diversity. So you think that you're in charge of your life, you think you're in charge of your evolution, you think you're in charge of your perceptions. I mean, I joke, just ask a woman who's PMSing if she feels in charge of her perceptions. But that's an example of signaling molecules changing how you perceive the world and how you act in it. And microbes are as much responsible for that as anything else. You know what's even crazier? Anybody know what a terabyte is? Terabyte, got a hard drive, external hard drive, 1 terabyte, 2 terabytes. I think you can get 10, maybe if you paid thousands of dollars for it. You can have 100 million terabytes of information in 1/5 of a teaspoon of your fecal material, your waste. 100 million terabytes of information in 1/5 of a teaspoon of what you excrete every single day. So, wow, how do you put that on a supercomputer? It makes us feel extremely insignificant, but it makes us also ask this question. If we can just kind of humble ourselves to it and not feel like we're superior beings, but like we are a manifestation of elements that are here to experience, and this is all a part of that experience. So is it this? Is it this? Is it some combination of the two? Or are we really at the behest of something that we don't understand in any way, shape, form, or idea? The importance is to be aware that there's way more out there than we perceive on any given day. So holistic has a meaning that is far-reaching. It's not just about alternative therapies, is it? It's about using social media. It's about using technology. It's about using modern medicine and surgery and drugs, even if it's necessary. It's even about using biotech And genetic engineering, if it applies to actually improving our lives and doesn't deceive us and poison us, because we have an interrelatedness to everything that we take in. And with this concept of microbes in our systems that are filtering all of our perceptions, we have to actually now ask ourselves about all the ancient herbal therapies. How are they actually rendering an effect in our body? They go through the filter of microbes. They are going through microbes if we apply them to our skin. They're going through microbial filter if we take them in orally. So what does ashwagandha do for us? What does reishi do for us? What does shankapushpi do for us? How do these work? They're being filtered through microbes in some way. What is the effect they have on the microbes? If they have a doshic effect on the microbes, what is the doshic effect of the microbes on us? You know, these are all now questions that we have to answer as we look at ancient philosophies, which are hugely valid, and modern medicine and modern research. It all has to be integrated, and that's what true holism is. And it's our egos that have always gotten in the way of that. But if we can embrace it as the manifestation of matter, and if we can keep in mind our interrelatedness to all things, what food we take into our bodies matters. Where it comes from matters. You can't drink coffee that's not organic, that may have been grown by somebody in another country with no rules on what kind of safety they have on the farm that they're growing coffee, and they're getting sprayed with pesticide while they're harvesting your beans, or they're encouraged economically to just grow coffee and tea and give up all other crops that might have actually fed them. You can't eat coffee and tea. You know, if you're eating food that has been genetically engineered and it's altering the vibration in your body, even if it doesn't, it's altering the vibration of the community where those crops are grown because of the poisons that are used on the crops more and more and more, and somebody is suffering so that we can eat. And that's what we have to consider. This has an imprint all the way around. And we also have an obligation to inform ourselves. The information is out there. We are responsible to inform ourselves. We can no longer say, hey, you know, my mom and dad smoked cigarettes because the doctor told them back in the day that, you know, it would help their nerves. You know, that we can't do that anymore. We can't poison our bodies with food and say, hey, the government, you know, puts these foods on the shelves. They must be safe. They must be good for me. We know better. We know that we have to actually look for that information now. You know, it's really important to take responsibility. So the future of healthcare is actually about taking responsibility, learning about ourselves, learning about how we interact with the greater world around us, what it all means, and informing ourselves, because nobody's going to do it for us. And if we can at least relate to the interconnectedness of all things, then we understand its actual effect on our health. And that's true holism. We have to look at things from all aspects. Everything that we do for health, for wellness, for our nourishment, has to take into consideration the effect that it has on our greater community right here and on the larger global community as a whole. And I don't even think we know what effect we might actually have on the universal community. So as without, so within, as above, so below, the macrocosm reflected in the microcosm. And now we're looking at the microcosm inside of us. So I hope that gives you a nice little visual and auditory journey to how we might all be connected and what holistic medicine really means. Any questions I can answer? Comments, questions, ruminations, meditations? Thank you all for your attention. Appreciate it.